Please welcome to the stage Dr. Andrew Maynard.
What a great introduction. We need risk. And it's great because somehow I've been tagged as the risk person in the work that I do. I want to start by saying a few years ago, I was asked to teach entrepreneurial ethics to engineers. This was when I was at the University of Michigan. I have no idea why I was asked to teach this. I'm a physicist, probably because everybody hates teaching ethics to engineers, nearly as much as engineers hate going to ethics classes. So actually, we didn't talk about ethics. We talked about value creation. But the two things that reside in my memory from teaching that course are, first of all, virtually every student that came through that course was more interested in creating value beyond making money. They wanted to make the world a better place. And the second thing was they really struggled in how to operationalize that. And of course, this is a challenge that entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinkers the world over struggle with. How do you actually create the value that is meaningful to you rather than just make money? It's a challenge that one particular company faced back in 2006. So back in 2006, an entrepreneur, Blake Mycoskie, had a fantastic idea. He wants to make the world a better place. And he said, why don't we set up a one-for-one partnership between a company and a charity? The company will make shoes, and for every pair of shoes that are sold, we'll give away a free pair of shoes to somebody that needs them in a developing economy. A fantastic idea. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything seemed to be going fine until you get to 2015, and then people began to realize that this idea maybe wasn't quite as good as it seemed. And this was really captured in a piece by Amanda Taub in Vox.com, with the headline blaring out, "Buying Tom's shoes is a terrible way to help poor people." Where did all those good intentions go? Worse than that, if you read the subtitle, it was, "Did you buy Tom's shoes because you want to make the world a better place? If so, you should be a little mad." So Blake ran into this problem that so many entrepreneurs run into, that despite the best of intentions, they hit roadblocks, they hit risks, which just seem to pull the rug from under their feet. And one of the big challenges we face in teaching entrepreneurial mindsets and value creation is how to help people navigate this landscape that is emerging before them. It's a little bit like when you go back to centuries ago where you had the map makers creating these maps as people were exploring the world, and there are all sorts of unknown dangers out there, and because they really didn't know what was out there, they used to place these monsters, these dragons, on the maps. And you had these little labels saying, "Here be dragons." Well, of course, we don't have real dragons mainly in the world today, but we do have metaphorical dragons as we stand on the edge of tomorrow, as we push out the bounds of innovation. And the challenge as we teach entrepreneurs and we teach entrepreneurial mindsets and how to create value is how to navigate these metaphorical dragons that lay between us and that value we're trying to create. So this is actually something that I've been struggling with and working on for many years now, including going back to teaching entrepreneurial ethics. And the question is, how do we navigate risks when we live in a highly uncertain world, and a world that is getting more uncertain by the day? It's dominated by technological complexity, but also social complexity. And the way we've been doing that is through a concept called risk innovation, which is not about how to come up with more creative risks, but it's actually how to use an entrepreneurial mindset to navigate really complex risks. So I just want to read out this very simple definition. Risk innovation, when we think about it, is a way of approaching risk that leads to new knowledge, new understanding, and new capabilities, and translates these into products, tools, and practices that protect and grow societal, environmental, economic, and other forms of risk. And I want to read that out because anybody that is familiar with how we define entrepreneurialism and innovation will realize that this has got very close ties with how we think about innovation. And there are three pillars here that are especially important. The first is, it depends on creativity and imagination. That's what drives value creation here. Secondly, it relies on building tools, ways of actually building value. And finally, that key point, Risk innovation is all about protecting and growing value. We've flipped the equation. Instead of saying risk is about don't do things because they're risky, we're saying how can we utilize risk to create value in a more robust and sustainable way. So to get an idea of how that works, and this is what we do through a very practical initiative at Arizona State University called the Risk Innovation Nexus, where we bring people together to see how we can practically apply this. But to understand how that works, I want to both give you 3 pillars of this and then show you how this might have applied back in 2006 when Tom's was starting out. So those three pillars are, first of all, starting off with value. As I said, we flip the equation. Instead of talking about risk, we talk about value creation. Then we realize that if you're looking to the future, you can't be talking about putting numbers on risk because those risks don't exist yet. So we train people and we teach people to think differently about risk. And finally, we provide them with the tools that allow them to do that. So what do those tools look like? This is one particular way that we do it. So imagine we're back in 2006, and we have 30 minutes to talk to the Tom's team about the sorts of metaphorical dragons that they might be facing. We would start off by asking them about areas of value, first of all to themselves or the enterprise. And we go beyond fiscal value. So we might have, for instance, said, maybe you're interested in improving the lives of poor communities, and of course they were. And they're interested in customers who believe in philanthropy. But importantly, we'd also ask them, what are the areas of value to your key constituencies? Not only your investors and your customers, but also the communities that you're touching and affecting. So for instance, those communities might be interested in a need for sustainable and effective poverty solutions, or a need for successful innovations. And the key here is, if you understand what's of value to the people that you're touching, you can understand how you might threaten that value and how you can avoid those threats to value and succeed because of it. We then begin to chart out the risk landscape. So this is where we get to those metaphorical dragons. Of course, we don't use maps like this where we just put here be dragons, but we do use what we call orphan risks. So these are the sorts of risks that are easy to ignore, easy to overlook, hard to put numbers on, but quite often come back to bite you. And we have 18 specific orphan risks we look at. But specifically, as we go through this process, we map them against those areas of value. So you can imagine in this conversation with Tom's, as we went through this, certain things would pop up, and you can see from here that as we go through this exercise, it becomes clear that what people think about what you do becomes incredibly important, not necessarily what you do. Social justice and equity become important. Geopolitics and reputation and trust become critically important. And immediately you can begin to see that you have a map here that you can use to help navigate the complexities of doing good and creating value in a complex world. So with that conversation, you can imagine a couple of things might have come out if we just had half an hour with that team. The first is pushing them to think about what the actions that this company would take would do to affect the communities that they claim to be helping. And the second important thing is to work out what that nexus is between geopolitics and engaging with those communities and truly doing good in those communities rather than just thinking you're doing good. And the chances are that that shift in mindset that would come from that would have actually changed how the company operated. Now, of course, this is a challenge that all entrepreneurs face. Some of them are trying to make the world a better place. Some of them have got a bit of a bad rap in terms of making the world a bad place. But even if you look at someone like Elizabeth Holmes, the chances are that she actually started out to make the world a good place, but she got so wrapped up in orphan risks that she failed badly. And this is the challenge we have as educators, as we're trying to teach people how to create value through an entrepreneurial mindset in a world that is deeply complex. And the question is, how do we equip them to create value in a world where the risks that they don't pay attention to, those orphan risks, those largely social risks, can potentially trip them up, blindside them, and prevent them from doing what they set out to do? And there are some fairly simple ways to progress here. Just 4 of those, and the ones that we focus on, are identifying the orphan risks which are going to be important to you, those metaphorical dragons. Learning how to navigate a dynamic risk landscape. Creating mutual value. Don't just think about what value you're creating, but think about how what you do creates value to others and how it potentially threatens what's important to others. And finally, but perhaps most importantly, don't get stymied by a task that seems so large that you can't do anything, but learn to take small steps so you can actually build a better world through value creation, through a risk innovation mindset. Thank you very much.